My book, Women of Pride, is about the Devadasi heritage from a dancer's viewpoint. Many people have this misconception because the word Devadasi became associated in the latter part of the 20th century with the idea of women of ill repute. I wanted to clear their image of this one-dimensional viewpoint because Devadasis have a 1,000-year-old history in our culture, and they contributed immensely for the maintenance of not only music and dance, but various other art forms and literature, because they were the original, educated, liberated women of India. They had pride in their skill as artists, and they were honored and feted by so many royalty and royal dynasties have even put up statues for them in temples because they were women of some substance. Bharatanatyam, my speciality, has a very long history, but we can trace it back to the time of Rajaraja Chola, the king who ruled over Tanjavur 1000 years ago. But what intrigued me about the whole Devadasi tradition was when I first visited Tanjavur, the great temple of Brihadishwara in Tanjavur, which Rajaraja built, is a living historic monument. I say living because the king in his own lifetime has inscribed the whole history of his reign on the walls of this temple. And as a dancer, what interested me particularly about this history was the fact that during the time of Rajaraja, he had employed no less than 400 dancers to work in this temple as temple dancers, musicians, and people who did ritual dance on particular occasions, every day in the ritual worship of the temple. Not only that, he has given the name of each and every dancer and the house number and street in which she was allotted a special house by the king. Now, this fact really intrigued me so much that I applied for a fellowship with the Government of India and got a fellowship to research this temple dance tradition of South India. Eventually, what happened was I did some field work and met the last of the Devadasis. And this was way back in the 70s because that's when I was a research student. And that was also the time when at least a handful of these women who had actually come from the hereditary families were still alive in and around Tanjavur. So I got some first-hand information about their life in dance, their lifestyle, what they learned, who their gurus were, which village they belonged to, and so on and so forth. But it was not until 2001 that I was actually asked by a publisher to write a book on the Devadasi tradition. So this really gave me a new perspective on what I should be writing. As a dancer, of course, I wanted to write about their repertoire through the ages, what they danced in the temple, what they danced in the court of kings, and so on. But I also wanted to put the South Indian Devadasi, particularly the dancers, in a historic perspective of not only South India but the whole of India, because they are a pan-Indian phenomenon. As many people know, Devadasis attached to temples are a phenomenon from north up to Kanyakumari. Every region in ancient India had temples in which temple dancers were employed. And we have ancient texts like Arthashastra and Kama Sutra, which tell us about the skills of the courtesans who specialized in music and dance. In our own culture, that is in my part of India, the ancient text called Silappatikaram in Tamil explains everything about the life of a courtesan dancer who learned from a guru for 7 years and mastered all the related arts to dance in order to do her first performance, and how she was duly rewarded. So these things stayed in my mind, and I thought, let me connect all this information, make it into one book so that the whole concept of the Devadasi is demystified. Because I feel that many people have very wrong notions about the Devadasi. They only know the last years of the Devadasi tradition, when they fell upon bad times, when they became very poor, and when they had to eke out a living in rather unseemly conditions, in very morally degrading situations, and also in economically very poor situations. So a lot of Western writers and Indian writers took the story of the Devadasi, meaning the last of them, and how they were disreputable women and so on. But to me as an artist, that was not the point. I'm not talking about the fading out or the decline and extinction of a long cultural heritage of the Devadasis. To me, it was important to research what they contributed to music and dance, what they contributed to the culture of India over a length of 1,000 years. And I found that once I started writing the book, it was indeed a pleasure for me to connect it with my dance heritage, because we would not be doing Bharatanatyam or Odissi or any of the classical dances of India today were it not for the contribution and selfless devotion to dance that the Devadasis practiced for years and years and years. Of course, they had many ups and lives in their history. Depending on which dynasty was ruling in which part of the country, their fortunes rose and fell. But they were women of pride. They had pride in their work, they had pride in their skills, and they were philanthropists. You'll be surprised to know that the number of Devadasis contributed gold and jewelry and a lot of their wealth to the upkeep of temples. And this is all not make-believe history. This is inscribed in the temple itself. So people should know that we have a cultural history going back 1,000 years, which had many dark periods as well. But this history cannot be erased.